You finished your coffee, tidied a few things, and started your day, but someone in your home hasn't moved. Not a muscle, not a sound. Your mother, your father, your spouse, or maybe even your child still lies there, breathing slowly. Their chest rises and falls, calm, peaceful, almost unnervingly so. You call their name, nothing. You shake their shoulder, nothing. Panic creeps in. Minutes stretch into hours. By midday, they're still asleep. You pace the room, heart racing, listening to the quiet tick of the clock. Every shadow feels longer, every sound sharper. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the stove, the soft rustle of curtains. It all makes you jump. Could this really be happening? Scenes like this began appearing in parts of Europe around 1917. At first, it was quiet. Someone overslept, a neighbor felt unusually tired, a shopkeeper closed early. People shrugged it off. Life went on. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. A man slumped over a cafe table, his untouched coffee growing cold. A factory worker leaned against the wall, drifting in and out of consciousness as machines clanked around him. In homes across towns, people lay in bed for entire days, breathing normally but refusing to wake. Sometimes their eyes opened briefly, then slipped straight back into the same deep sleep. The streets slowed, conversations hushed. Children stared at parents who couldn't respond. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Neighbors knocked more often, unsure whether to check in or leave someone alone. Even passers-by noticed the silence in streets that should have been lively. And doctors were called, but even they were puzzled. The patients didn't look sick. Lungs sounded clear, hearts beat steadily. Many had no fever, yet something inside them had taken control of one of the most basic human rhythms. They couldn't stay awake, and no one seemed to know why. By 1917, Europe was already worn down by years of war. Hospitals overflowed. Doctors understood many illnesses, but the brain remained largely mysterious. Patients began arriving with the same complaint, a crushing exhaustion, heavier than anything they'd ever felt, as if some quiet force had simply switched off their energy. Mothers stumbled into clinics, clutching children who refused to wake. Fathers appeared, eyes wide with disbelief after finding spouses asleep on the floor. Teachers, pale and weary, reported students slumped over desks mid-lesson, pencils still in hand. Could you imagine walking into your classroom or your own home and seeing that? Many tried to push through it. Parents cooked meals, tucked children into bed. People kept their shifts, moving almost robotically, trying to keep the world running. Students scribbled notes in half-empty classrooms, glancing repeatedly at absent friends, hoping for a normal day. But sooner or later, exhaustion caught up. They started falling asleep. Not ordinary sleep. Deep, unshakable. Families called names, shook shoulders, clapped hands. Often there was almost no response. Across towns, the stories were the same. Someone fell asleep mid-conversation. Another sat just for a moment and remained unconscious for an entire day. Children whispered to one another, "Why won't mother wake?" Fathers hesitated at doorways, unsure whether to disturb the stillness. You can almost feel the tension, the uncertainty pressing down like the weight of an invisible illness. What would you do in that moment? Early patients were ordinary people, workers, teachers, parents. One woman finished breakfast, wiped the table, and sat down. Her children assumed she was resting. The next morning, she was still asleep. A baker's apprentice fell asleep while kneading dough, the smell of yeast and flour filling the quiet room. A young man, walking home from work, simply slumped against a lamppost, unaware he was being watched. Even the streets themselves seemed to hold their breath. A dog howled, a cat padded softly, the world pausing under the weight of an unseen hand. Doctors noticed a pattern: headaches or blurred vision first, then exhaustion, then sleep. Some patients eventually woke, confused but alive. Others developed something far more disturbing. Their bodies became rigid, almost frozen. Eyes could move, voices whispered, but muscles refused to cooperate. Watching someone alive, yet trapped in their own body, left families silent, hearts aching. Every small movement became precious. Every whispered word from a patient felt like a gift. Whispers spread through towns. Was it contagious? A curse? Exhaustion from war? No one knew. Physicians across Europe and North America shared reports urgently. Neurologists, specialists in the brain, took particular interest. Patients weren't simply tired. Something was interfering with systems controlling wakefulness and movement. Hospitals soon filled with more cases. In some wards, rows of patients lay quietly, almost peaceful. Nurses tried to wake them, many barely responded. Doctors tried what they could, stimulants, diet adjustments, careful monitoring, but the illness had its own path. Some improved, others stayed in hospitals for months. Survivors often developed lasting movement problems, stiff muscles, slowed walking, difficulty speaking. The illness didn't behave like anything doctors knew. It didn't sweep through cities in waves. It struck unpredictably, one place, then another. Families improvised. Siblings read books aloud to parents slumbering. Neighbors brought water or meals, leaving quietly by candlelight. Teachers left lessons half-taught. Students copied notes from empty desks. Children tiptoed around kitchens, careful not to wake the sleepers. Life continued in small, tentative rhythms around the sleepers, fragile, yet stubborn. Eventually, it was named encephalitis lethargica, a phrase meaning inflammation of the brain linked with overwhelming sleepiness. Naming it wasn't understanding it. Reports spread across Europe and North America. Patients slipped into near-continuous sleep for days, even weeks. Physicians searched for explanations. A virus attacking the brain? The immune system overreacting? None fully explained the outbreak. Even today, modern medicine debates what triggered it. Patients slept for days, drifting through extreme drowsiness, later developing severe movement disorders. Over a century later, one question lingers. If a mysterious neurological illness like this appeared today, how quickly would we recognize it? Could it happen again while we were still trying to understand? Looking back, the epidemic of 1917 is deeply human. Doctors documented symptoms when answers refused to appear. Nurses cared for patients who might sleep for days. Families supported loved ones whose bodies had suddenly changed. Communities adapted quietly. Neighbors checked on one another. School schedules shifted. Workplaces adjusted. Even in small acts, leaving a warm meal, covering a sleeping child with a blanket, humanity persisted. The 1917 sleep epidemic reminds us how fragile life can be when the unknown appears without warning. And yet, even in those moments, something else appeared too. Quiet acts of care. People looking out for one another while science slowly searches for answers.